Welcome to the Remarkable Life podcast. I'm your host and coach, and today interviewer, Caryn Gillen. And we're lucky because we have a guest who is here to help you connect more to yourself, which is always a favorite kind of conversation for me. So, is it Ciara? Am I saying your name right?
It's Ciara, like the singer. Yeah.
Ciara. Ciara. Okay. Ciara is here. Can you do a little bit of an intro for our people in your own words?
Sure. So, hi, everybody. I'm Ciara Rubin. I am a best-selling author. I am a speaker, and I am actually also a singer. That's what I did in my old life. And I help empaths stop second guessing and trust their intuition. But even if you're not sure if you resonate with that label of empath or HSP or highly sensitive, I know that you can resonate with the idea of having gut feelings about things or about people that you later wish that you had listened to. So that is what I help people in my community, my students, my clients do. And hopefully we can dive into some things to help you do the same today.
Fun. Okay, so we have to start out by defining the terms. What is an empath?
Yes. So my mom actually, when I was growing up, always referred to the women in my family as being empaths or empathic. So that is where my definition is coming from, is from living my lifetime so far of 35 years of identifying as an empath. And so what I experienced as I grew up with that understanding of being that was that I had a really good sense of energy, of other people's energy. For example, if you ask somebody, "How are you?" and they say, "Oh, I'm fine." Okay, but you're kind of
You don't believe
reading,
them.
yeah, you're reading between the lines a little bit more. And sometimes being a little bit more sensitive to certain things, certain substances, alcohol or caffeine or certain medications. You might be just a little bit more bodily sensitive. Somebody who is an empath might resonate with struggling with either historically or currently anxiety or digestion issues as well. This is somebody who is just a giver, sometimes an overgiver, sometimes the counselor of their friend group, right? The one that everybody comes to when they have a problem, and sometimes gets emotionally dumped on a little bit. So
Mhm.
I know that a lot of you guys can probably identify with some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. What about an intuitive? What's the difference between the two, or what would you add?
So I would say that an intuitive is really just somebody that is spending time developing their intuitive abilities. So an empath is somebody who is primarily clairsentient. That is the word. So there are four main languages of the intuition, and clairsentience is one of them. So an empath would be somebody who identifies as being primarily clairsentient. So to me, the terms are sort of interchangeable. It's just that intuition or intuitive is a broad term that can be defined with those four senses. And then empath is getting a little bit more specific into one of those intuitive senses.
Cool. Okay. So I also want to highlight, and I have it for the YouTubers, your new book
Mhm.
titled You Always Know, 4-Step Guide for Empaths to Stop Second Guessing and Trust Your Intuition. And I'm about halfway through, and it's a really easy read. And it's a very, like, if you're at all kind of intuitive, curious, or you're super empathic and you want to put some good boundaries on it for yourself, or get some inspiration about what to do and how to care for your own energy, it's a really clear, like, easy to read, and it's fun. Like, you're super straightforward in how you're writing it. You're like, this is the way it is. It's like, choose what you want. Here you go. I am really enjoying it.
Thank you. I appreciate that you say it's an easy read. It was quite a process.
It's hard to write easy.
It was a process to get it to that place, and I would be lying if I said that the first draft looked anything like that. So
I'm having written a book. I know that editors are magic, and every book typically has one. Every good book has one, right? Like, someone who has really helped.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I DIY'd a lot of it and hired out some of it. So I did have two rounds of beta readers, rounds of people who fit my ideal client or reader avatar, read through the book, give me feedback, make me realize I needed to write like, another half book
Yeah.
to give them everything that they were asking for, the full transformation, right, that I'm promising. And then I did pay a proofreader on the back end, but in the middle of it, I used something called the Hemingway app. Have you heard of that?
No. Mm-mm.
Ernest Hemingway was like a poet writer a long, long time ago. So it's this app that you can download. So I actually myself took the book after the beta reading, took the feedback, wrote the extra chapters, and then put it through that app and went line by line myself. And so that what that app does is it highlights the book with about 5 different indicators of like, you're using passive voice, you need to use active voice. This sentence is hard to read. This sentence is really hard to read. Um,
Oh,
so that's why it's easy to read, is because I actually went through that app and broke it apart to make it a lot
amazing.
more digestible.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay. And one of the things, I work with a lot of people who work with a lot of people. And so I think having this conversation about intuition and how do we use it in our work would be interesting. Like
Mhm.
that non-attached way intuition can show up. For example, like I'll be coaching someone and I'll just hear a song and I'll just share like the lyric that won't leave me alone. And like that can open things up. But I'm just curious how you use it in your own work with people or how you advise folks to use it.
Yeah. And it really depends on the primary language that their intuition is speaking. So that's what we go through in the first part of the book. And there's fun quizzes to help you figure out, which Claire, and I'll briefly go through each one of them, is the primary language that your intuition is speaking to you. Because once you know that primary language, like you said, you got that song sign. So you're really tuned into the fact that your intuition is speaking to you through music. Your intuition is speaking to you through, well, we don't listen to the radio anymore, Spotify and, Apple Music and all the things. Or even if you're just in a store or wherever you're at and you're hearing, the ambient music. So I get signs like that as well. But so the four senses first would be clairsentience. And so that is clear feeling. So that's a bodily sense. That is those gut feelings. That is those like shudders or shivers that you get down your spine when you're feeling excited or scared about something, when your hair stands on end. All of those types of things, bodily sensations. Sometimes you feel like this weird phantom sensation, or you're feeling pain in a certain part of your body chronically. That is a very empathic, clairsentient thing that happens. And then clairvoyance would be another one. That's clear seeing. So that would be, if you consider yourself a visual learner, if you consider yourself to be a visionary or a creative, and creative can mean visual art, but doesn't necessarily. It just means somebody that is that visionary, has creative vision for their life, right? Somebody who would be really good at like Where's Waldo or Hidden Picture or something like that, might be primarily clairvoyant. And then clairaudience, that's the one that you were talking about. So that's clear hearing. That is somebody who considers themselves to be an auditory learner, or maybe is either a musician or musically inclined, or maybe just really feels deeply moved by music, will get those song signs. And then the final one is claircognizance. So that is clear knowing. And that one can be a little bit more elusive because the information tends to come just immediately into your awareness, into your brain. And it's really hard sometimes to trust that because we need everything to be really hard or like really big, like a billboard, sometimes for us to trust it and listen to it. But that would be somebody who's primarily claircognizant would resonate with the idea of being somewhat intellectual, somebody who enjoys exploring symbolism and metaphor, somebody who maybe comes from an intuitive family. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be like developing their intuition, but just like how I, grew up as an empath's daughter, right? That kind of
Mm.
thing.
Yeah.
And so how you can use that in your business is really just depends on on what you're wanting to do. You know, something that came up in an interview that I did recently with my friend Chrissy Chin, was that it can actually really help you with comparison, because a lot of times we are looking at all the things and we feel inspired by something or triggered by something or someone that we see on the internet. And then we are like, well, shoot, now I need to change everything I'm doing because this person is doing this and it's worked for them, right? But what's worked for other people isn't always going to be what works for you. And so tuning into your intuition is really helpful for breaking through that noise that you might be feeling, or that anxiety, or that excitement that you might be feeling, that initial excitement, to really tune in and say, hey, you know, I'm excited about this, or I'm feeling triggered by this. And is this something that's really meant for me? Or is this something that, you know, maybe will be meant for me down the line, but I just really need to focus on what I'm doing right now?
Mhm. Yeah. So it's like an internal guidance system that we all have.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about trust then, because if we have all these guidance systems, even like if you're using the navigation in your car and you're like, but I know that's not the right way, I'm not going to listen to, Siri telling me that direction. How do you, how do we trust ourselves more? How does all this help?
Well, the way out is through. So or the way in, in this case, is through. And so oftentimes, it involves a lot of self-examination. It involves taking a look at the experiences in your life that may have led to you not trusting yourself. So that means in part 2 of my book, I talk about releasing fear, or I introduce this concept of shadow work. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept at all, but basically taking a look at the ways in which you have been taught to not trust yourself in your life, whether that was from a parent or a caregiver, society, culture at large. There are a lot of voices outside of you that are not always malicious either. A lot of well-meaning shoulds, as I say, a lot of well-meaning, oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. Oh, you don't know anything. You're just a kid. You don't know. You're just a teenager. How did you know? You're just in your 20s. How would you know? You don't even have kids yet. You know, like all of these voices of people who don't trust themselves, projecting that onto you and taking a look at that and saying, okay, this is what's true for them. Is this true for me? Is this true for me? And there are different ways that you can use to figure that out, based on which your primary clair is, or just which one interests you the most. You can do that by checking in with your yes and no, which is an exercise that I teach. You can do that by asking for a visual sign, and getting very specific. You can get as specific as you want with those signs. You can say, if I'm meant to say yes to this opportunity, show me a yellow butterfly within 24 hours,
Mhm.
or whatever the sign is. And then the key here is then to let it go, right? Not be looking for that butterfly everywhere, and see what happens. And if you see the sign, it's a yes. And if you don't see the sign, it's a no,
Mhm.
right? And then the song sign is another great way to check in, to ask for a song sign that will give you some direction, and listen for what you hear, what the lyrics mean to you, or what it brings up for you. And then the last way is a practice that I call automatic writing. So that's basically where you set a timer and you write your question, or the thing that you're contemplating at the top of the page. Set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes and just write. And if you don't know what to write, write, I don't know what to write,
Mhm.
until something starts to happen, and you will be amazed at what comes through.
Yeah. So doing this, there's the level of like actually taking the action to do the thing, ask for the sign, do the automatic writing. And then there's the next thing that can happen, which is judge what comes up. And what's your take on how to get through the judgment for people?
Mm, mm. It just keeps coming back to the shadow work for
Yeah.
me. Why, I think it's really good to check your intuition with logic. I think there is a place for logic, and discernment always, and to take your time with things, taking your time to respond to things, and it's just that self-inquiry piece is that, why am I judging this? Maybe it's because it doesn't feel logical. It doesn't seem logical to me that this is the answer to my question, because I asked about A, but my intuition is telling me X. But sometimes your intuition has a different perspective because it is outside of time, and
Mhm.
it does not have fear. And your intuition does not need to eat or sleep, right? So it
Right.
doesn't have those survival instincts or needs that you have in your body. And so why it doesn't seem logical is because of that, is because it doesn't have the same constraints and anxieties and baggage, for lack of a better term, that we have. And so it can be really hard to trust it sometimes when you're judging, well, I asked for A and you're giving me X. But every single time, and all I can speak from is my personal experience and, the experience of the people that I work with, every single time that I have trusted my gut and trusted my intuition, even when it wasn't giving me a logical answer, I have always been validated and seen the trajectory of my life move up.
Yeah. What's on the horizon for you and your intuition right now? Like, what are you leaning into?
So right now I am leaning into teaching live workshops, starting to get my feet wet with getting in front of people, not just behind a computer screen, right? Like
Mhm.
post pandemic, getting back out there in the world and really grounding things. And starting to build the foundation of my business. I mean, this book is the foundation of
Mhm.
my business right now. And so for me, the next thing is to just get out there and serve as much as I can in the way that I do best, which is just speaking and sharing and channeling and answering questions. So that's what's on the horizon for me right now.
Cool. What's your hope for people who take the opportunity and read the book?
My hope is that they realize that even though when they do that self-inquiry that they may find some limiting beliefs and they may find some shadows and some difficult things, but that doesn't mean, and I'm going to speak directly to you who's listening, that doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, that you don't trust yourself. You have just covered yourself with all these layers, all of these layers of armor that you needed in order to survive your upbringing, in order to survive this fear-filled world that we live in. And so my hope is that as you start to not become someone better, but become who you really are, in this process of peeling those layers away, that what you find when you get to know yourself and you do that self inquiry is that actually the person underneath all of that armor is more powerful and more magical and amazing than you even ever could have imagined. And to not fear that power, to not fear that magic, that it is safe. It's safe for you to be powerful, and it's safe for you to let yourself be loved and seen in the fullness of who you are and who you came here to be.
Mhm. Yeah. So then owning intuition, being with it, trusting ourselves is one of the earlier steps. And then realizing that there's work to do to own our power comes next.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we start with the fun part. We start with the figuring out the language your intuition speaks. And then the next part is the self inquiry. It's the shadow work. It's, burning down those well meaning shoulds to figure out what's really true. Discovering a lot of times that you actually knew exactly who you were meant to be when you came into this world. And to start to lean into that and turn that childlike, imaginative version of yourself into something tangible and practical, that can, other people can resonate with in the real world.
Mhm.
Um, and then once you're doing that work, you're becoming more sensitive, you're becoming more intuitive, your intuition is becoming stronger, it's speaking to you even more loudly. And so then it's time to start taking care of yourself on a spiritual level, and really deepening that level of self-care that you offer yourself. So I provide a lot of tools and mindset shifts to help you take good care of yourself, but also feel truly safe
Mm.
in your body and in the world.
Awesome. What's the question that I haven't asked you yet that I should have asked you?
um, that's it. So many things are, let me just like, yeah, I guess just why, like how did it even start? You know,
Mm-hmm.
how did I transition into doing what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
So it's definitely not something I ever thought I would be doing. I think that's a very common thing for those of us who end up in at least the sort of spiritual industry, if you will. Because I started as a singer, a performer. I went to school for musical theater, thought that I wanted to be on Broadway, realized what all was really involved in that, and that was a hard pass. And so then spent a few years feeling really lost and like bartending, and then took a job at a chamber of commerce, was promoted to their director of operations. So then I was, coordinating ribbon cuttings and shaking hands with the mayor, planning large scale events, coordinating the board meetings, and all of that fun stuff in the skirt suits. And it was great, but it still felt like something was missing. And then I was invited to an intuitive fair by a new friend of mine who worked at the newspaper, the local newspaper. We worked in the same building, and I sat down across from a woman who was doing this intuitive session with me, and she asked me, like, have you ever had any weird experiences or like paranormal experiences? And I was like, actually, yeah, like I haven't thought about that in a long time, but yes, I have, and started to tell her about some of those things, and she just looked at me plainly and said, "Yeah, you can do what I do. Like you're intuitive. You're going to be a teacher. You're going to be a spiritual leader." And I was like, "That's nuts.
And yeah.
I don't think so. Like I'm checking all the boxes, lady. Like, come on." Um, but something about it, right? That little voice, that little intuition was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds really exciting."
Yeah.
And so that's how I started to look into that, and that was in the beginning of 2015. And things have just gone ever since, just become really magical, really powerful, really intense sometimes. But I'm absolutely feel on purpose, and so grateful to have been directed into what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So life is a surprise from where you thought you'd be.
Yes,
And I'm assuming you use all the practices that you talk about in the book to stay here, to stay powerful.
I do.
Awesome. It's so nice that you put them in a really organized fashion so that we can all step in.
Yes, I do love to be organized, and I've even included reference tables in the back. That's one of the things that I've just been loving, is that a lot of my readers are saying like, "Oh my gosh, I just love, like, it's a quick reference guide. I am
Yeah.
often looking for this type of information, like I'm Googling it, but you've like condensed it all into one place in a very neat table." And so we love that. I love that
Yeah.
part of it.
When is the right time and the right person to come and work with you? Is that like a one-on-one experience or do you offer group stuff?
So I've just spent the past 2 years
Writing
writing
this
and
book?
publishing. And so at the end of March, I'm going to open the doors for the You Always Know book circle. So with me, we're going to go through for 8 weeks. So it will be like a group program experience. We'll go through for 8 weeks, each part of the book. And I've also will be giving them a workbook that they can follow along with me. And so we will be going through that together, having Q&A calls together where I can answer their questions for things that are coming up for them personally or in their business, and just really help them to stop second guessing themselves, to feel confident in their decision making, to feel more present and focused and motivated. So I'm really, really excited for that.
That's awesome. That'll be really fun. And I'll put the link in the show notes for people to get the book. Where do you hang out and where can people find you in the best way?
Thank you. I hang out on Instagram. That's where I hang out, at Ciara.Rubin. Pretty much every social media is under my name, but Instagram is where I'm the most active right now. And then also on my website, which is just ciararubin.com.
Easy. Nice. I like having these different names that we get to have our our handles make sense.
Yes.
All right. Well, is there any little piece of homework or little call to action for somebody who feels themselves leaning in that you would offer today?
Yes. And I will even, I'll even practice what I preach here, right? So if you feel like this episode has really, this message has really activated something within you, or you feel that little whisper that you don't always listen to, I would ask for a sign. Ask for a sign if you are meant to connect with me further. Ask for a sign if you should purchase the book or join the book circle or anything else that you are having to make a decision about. So, like I said earlier, get as specific as you want. Tell your intuition what you want to see and when you want to see it. The sweet spot, I would say, would be about between 12 to 24 hours. And just ask for a sign. Say, I would like to see a lucky penny, or I would like to see a feather or a butterfly or whatever it is within the next 12 to 24 hours if I'm meant to take action on fill in the blank,
Mm-hmm.
and see what happens. And if you see the sign, that's a yes. And
Yeah,
if you don't see the sign, that's a no.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, we can all use those.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here and for sharing. I think it's good to parse out, like, there's not just I see dead people, like the lovely movie Sixth Sense, right? Right. It's not just people who can see, it's the hearing and the feeling and the other one I'm not remembering, the knowing.
Yeah, and that is one thing that I want to say, and thank you for bringing that up, is that it is not having to be about that. It does not have to be scary, and it doesn't have to be that is something that's just for a special few or
Mhm.
spooky few people. This is something that, I as far as I know am not descended from any psychics or shamans or whatevers. I'm just a chick. Like, I'm just a girl that grew up with a slight interest in horoscopes and my mom telling me that I was an empath. And I just had the balls to dig a little deeper and look at things in a different way. And so, if you feel like that resonates with you more so than the whole "I see dead people" thing, then we're gonna get along. We're gonna get along just fine.
Yeah. I think it's also important to note that you can have intuition and use it in your life and not make it your business in your entire life. Right? Like, you can go down this road and not have to turn into a fortune teller or like any of these things that might be in your mind.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I really resonate with that, because every single person is intuitive. Like when I first that lady first told me, "Oh, like you're intuitive, da da da." I, to be honest, was like kind of high on life and thought like, "Oh, I'm special." But then I realized, "Oh no, this is just another part of the human experience, a sort of untapped part of the human experience that is available to anyone and everyone." And yes, everyone is intuitive, but not everyone is meant to be a spiritual teacher. And
Right.
just because you are developing your intuition doesn't mean that you have to become a spiritual teacher. Your intuition is applicable in every part of your life. In fact, some of my closest friends who are very, very successful entrepreneurs find that leaning into their intuition makes big changes in their personal life,
Hmm.
more, even more so than in their business. Though, of course, your business is always a reflection of you and your personal life. So there you go.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here and for sharing and for writing the book. I know it's a lot of work and it's hard work and it's a labor of love. And congratulations on getting it out into the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity and for allowing me to come on and share with your community.
Absolutely. Good to have you.
Awesome.
Thank you again to Ciara for being here and for sharing a little bit from her book, her life's work at this moment. Again, it's called You Always Know. And the link, if you want to pick that up, is in the show notes. I wanted to bring her here because I use intuition a lot in my coaching. And I've done a lot of work kind of behind the scenes of how do I want it to work for me? How can I access this for my clients in a way that works? And it's just something that I think helps all of the tools work better. So if you're looking for ways to have more impact in your coaching or your leadership and you want to tune in, I think it's a really wise choice. So, and if you have any questions, always feel free to DM me about how that looks. I know for some of you who have been in sessions with me, there are times where I very obviously drop intuition and share what I'm experiencing in my body based on what the coaching is happening, and it can be really fun. All right. I hope you all have a great day. I appreciate you being here and supporting women in business, women writing books, women putting their intellectual property out into the world. It's a big deal. We haven't always been able to do this. We haven't always been able to start our own radio shows and support each other. So for me, it means a lot that you're here and you're listening, and I appreciate it. All right. Have a great day.